Alright, so this is my first video on hopefully an anti-armor rocket propelled something rather. I've gone through a few variations, starting off with this one, so really just two. Actually, the first one I made on Tinkercad. It's how I got into CAD, and I don't have access to it anymore. So this is the first one I made in Fusion. And it's essentially my take on RPG 7. I don't really have any way of doing an initial ejection charge. I guess I could use pneumatic pressure, and I'm going to at some point, but this one was just going to sit inside a larger, just a tube, kind of PVC tube. And after coming out, these fins, which would be going all the way around it, would unfold. And my thought was that this kind of pattern up here would cause some spin, which would help stabilize, but more importantly, provide some centrifugal force to swing these down. And my thought here was also to print lots of different smaller pieces so I could test individually, and if something broke after launch, I would be able to replace a single part. But what that turned out to be is a real pain, and caused a lot more printing than necessary. You can see it's just mechanically way too complex with the amount of hardware it takes. And I also really didn't do any parametrizing, so it was really just my first try in Fusion, and I think it's fine as a learning thing. But I printed it out once fully, and I also I wasn't paying attention to the fact that, manufacturing with a 3D printer, when you're printing stuff like this, it makes sense to print it, 1 second, let's hide the word head. Well, it makes sense to print something like the this part, this kind of stock part here, straight up and down. But that's also causes it to be very weak due to the fact that, layer adhesion and stuff, as the printer's coming through sweeping, you're gonna have a really weak in twisting, and if it's bending. What you want to do would be, well, what I wanted to do at least, is print it like this, but at that point you're using support for the inside of this, and the tolerances are all off and the holes aren't working properly. So I really failed to pay attention to that aspect of it, and I really should have. So that's generally about it for this one. I think it looks pretty cool, but that's really not the point. And then after that, I switched over to this design, which I think is a bit better. Actually, quite better. It's fully parametrized, which is really great, so I can just change anything I'd like about it. Fin thickness, if I could get it to work for some reasons. Here we are. So it's a round diameter. Easily I can manipulate stuff. Oh, okay, so the top's not, that's because it's a curve. But as you can see, it doesn't mess up like the fins, they still rotate fine. Turn this back to 5. Damn. that was a bad example. Let's go through. Sorry. Okay, yeah, and then I tried to also use as little hardware as possible, and I tried to pay attention to the way it actually prints. So my idea with this was, for some reason that's not working. Odd. My idea here was to print it in as fins separately. Right, these would be laying flat on the build plate. And just use screws here, so these can print separately. They're very easy, you don't need support to print them. And then this prints as one going straight up. You also don't need support because of how small the holes actually are. The whole thing is 5 centimeters in diameter. And then I experimented with this part as far as having a chamfer here, which kind of helps to counteract the sort of buildup of filament that happens at the corners of the prints. And then just connects with 2 screws to the mount, and that's where the D motor goes. It's a D size, I think, Estes motor, so it's nothing crazy. I was thinking about doing a sugar rocket, but I didn't see any need. There we are. So it folds up like that, and then it comes down just like this. All of them fold up, and I actually have printed this out, so I'll show you in a second what it looks like once it's done. So yeah, here's the general outline. I'll change it to just wireframe. You can see the screws just going in to kind of countersink. And I could change this to work with any screw or a lot of different hardware, and it uses as little as I could incorporate. I think it's only using 6 screws, so that's great. And no glue is necessary. And you don't need supports to print either. And I used an Ender 3 to print this with just PLA, and it worked fine. Yeah, I think that's about it for the CAD, and I'll switch to just a view of what it actually looks like.
This is essentially how it
that's
works. The engine sits in the back there. This is an earlier revision where there was 4 screws, but I don't think that was necessary, so I got rid of 2 of them, and it works fine. You can see the fins pop out with ease. This is before I added the chamfers to those fin slots, so they do sometimes get stuck, but for the first prototype it's fine. And then this is the tube it fits in. Like I said, I can adjust the round diameter so that it's not fixed. It got stuck in the tube, but after I looked in it, it's because there was a bunch of paper at the end from when I tried to fire it. But yeah, it really is a really good fit, and it has the added benefit of pressure building up behind the round to help expel it faster. So that's about it.